Everyone in the office noticed her because she was always there by the door, standing quietly with her hands folded together. She did not speak unless someone asked her something. She kept her head down and tried to make herself invisible, but instead she became the target of laughter. Workers whispered about her whenever they walked past. Some said she was strange, others said she was poor, and a few even called her useless. She was known only as a Doorgirl, and nobody cared to ask her real name. From the very first day she stood at that door, people were curious. Why was she there every morning before everyone else arrived? Why did she remain there even after work hours were over? No one understood her reason. But instead of trying to know, they chose to laugh, to gossip, to judge. The office was full of busy people chasing success. But when they passed her, they slowed down, not to respect her, but to mock her. Her clothes were plain, a simple faded dress and worn-out shoes. Her hair was always tied back neatly but not stylish. Her bag was small and old. She carried herself with quiet dignity, but others saw only weakness. They whispered things like she cannot even afford new clothes. She does not belong in this big office. She has no future here. And each cruel word sank deep into her heart. Yet she never answered back. She stood silently as if she could not hear, but inside her heart trembled. There was one person, however, who noticed differently, the CEO of the company, a man everyone feared and respected. Every time he walked through those doors, his sharp eyes scanned the room. Workers straightened their backs and tried to impress him. But when his gaze fell on the Doorgirl, something unusual happened. His expression softened for a brief second. His steps slowed, and his eyes carried a kind of sadness. Nobody understood why. The staff joke about it, say maybe the CEO feels sorry for her. Maybe he wants her to leave but cannot say it. Some even laugh that the powerful CEO had his morning ruined every day by the sight of a useless girl at the door, but no one dared to say such things loudly in front of him. Still the whisper spread through the office like smoke. The Doorgirl heard every laugh, every cruel remark, but she held her tears until she was alone. She would return each evening to her small quiet room and sit on her narrow bed. On the wall there was a single framed photo. It was of a parent smiling brightly. She would touch the glass with trembling fingers and whisper softly, "I will make you proud one day. I will stand strong no matter what they say." And with that she gathered strength to face another day of humiliation. At work she stood in the same place by the entrance, sometimes holding papers, sometimes guiding visitors with polite gestures, but never raising her voice. People wondered why she never demanded a better job, why she did not leave, why she chose to stand there like a statue. But the truth was hidden deep within her heart, a truth that not even the cruelest whisper could erase, a truth that one man in the entire building seemed to know. One afternoon, as the laughter grew louder than usual, the CEO happened to walk past. A group of employees mocked the Doorgirl's shoes, saying, "Look at those. They must be older than this office itself. She still wears them. How pitiful." They laughed without mercy. But in the middle of their laughter, the CEO's steps stopped. His eyes turned toward them, cold and sharp. The workers froze for a moment and quickly lowered their heads, pretending to wake. The Doorgirl lowered her eyes too, trying to hide the pain in her heart. But the CEO's gaze lingered on her face longer than usual. He said nothing and walked away. But the silence he left behind was heavier than thunder. The workers exchanged uneasy looks, wondering if he had heard their words, wondering why he kept looking at the Doorgirl with such strange emotion. None of them knew that his silence carried a weight they could never imagine. The Doorgirl continued standing there the next day as if nothing had happened, her face calm, her posture humble, but her heart carried both pain and hope, pain from the endless mockery, and hope from the small flicker she noticed in the CEO's eyes. She did not know what it meant, but she felt it was not ordinary. It was as if he was holding a secret that belonged to both of them. Everyone else still laughed, still called her names, still treated her as invisible, but deep inside she knew a storm was coming. Something was about to change, and the truth that she carried silently in her heart would not remain hidden forever. One day the cruel laughter would be silenced, and the same people who mocked her would bow their heads in shame. And that day was coming closer than they could ever imagine. The morning sun touched the glass walls of the tall office building. And once again the Doorgirl stood quietly at her place, her head bowed slightly, her hands holding a small notebook, her clothes clean but plain, her shoes still the same worn pair. The workers walked past her with their usual smirks, their laughter growing louder as the hours passed, and every cruel word became like a thorn pressed deeper into her heart. One woman whispered loudly enough for others to hear, "Look at her standing there like a statue. She thinks this is a palace." Another man laughed and added, "Maybe she is waiting for a prince who will never come." And the group burst into giggles, their voices echoing across the hallway. But the Doorgirl stayed still, her eyes lowered, pretending not to hear, though inside her chest a storm of pain raged quietly. She wanted to cry, but she swallowed her tears. At lunchtime, the workers gathered around the big tables in the cafeteria, and again the Doorgirl became the subject of their gossip. Some said she had no family. Some said she was only there because someone took pity on her. One voice even said she is a burden on this office. She should leave, and everyone nodded with cruel smiles. None of them knew the real story. None of them cared to know. They only enjoyed the game of making fun of someone weaker than themselves. When the Doorgirl went home that night, she walked slowly down the narrow street leading to her small room. The air was cold and the world was quiet. She unlocked the door and stepped inside. The room was almost empty. Just a bed, a small table, and the framed photo of her parents on the wall. She sat on the bed and stared at the picture, her hands trembling as she whispered softly, "I'm trying. I'm doing my best. Please guide me. I feel so alone. But I will stay strong." Her voice cracked, but she wiped away her tears with the edge of her sleeve. She remembered how her parents had once told her that dignity was not about rich clothes or grand houses. Dignity was about standing tall even when the world tried to break you. So every morning she returned to that door. No matter how much laughter followed her, she told herself that one day the truth would shine, and those who mock her would understand the weight of her silence. Meanwhile, the CEO had not forgotten what he saw the previous day. The laughter that stopped when his sharp gaze landed on the workers, the quiet pain hidden in the Doorgirl's eyes. His heart was restless. He sat alone in his office staring at the city lights, his mind heavy with memories that tied him to her, memories that filled him with regret and sorrow. He wanted to protect her, but he also knew the truth was not ready to be revealed yet. The right time had not come. The workers continued their cruelty without mercy. One morning they left small notes near the door mocking her, calling her useless, calling her poor. She picked up each note quietly, folded them, and placed them inside her notebook, not tearing them, not throwing them, just keeping them as silent witnesses of her pain. She told herself that one day these words would no longer hurt. They would only remind her of how strong she had been. But even as she endured, she felt cracks forming in her heart. Late at night she sometimes cried until her pillow was wet, asking herself why life was so harsh, why people could be so cruel without knowing her story. But then she would remember the CEO's eyes, the strange sadness he carried whenever he looked at her, and that small memory gave her a reason to stand again the next day. It was as if he silently told her not to give up. In the office the gossip grew wilder. Some workers began making bets, saying how many more days until she quits. Some joked she might faint one day from standing so long. Others mocked her shoes again, saying they were relics from another century. Their laughter echoed through corridors like a cruel song. But what they did not know was that every cruel word was being heard not just by her but also by the one man who mattered most, the CEO. The CEO watched quietly, his silence heavy, his anger hidden behind calm eyes. He knew the day was approaching when the truth would no longer be buried. He knew that the same mouth that mocked would one day fall silent in shame. But for now he waited. For now he watched. For now he let the storm build. The Doorgirl remained at her place, her back straight, her eyes lowered, her heart trembling but unbroken. She whispered silently to herself, I will endure until the day they understand, until the day the truth is spoken." And with that whisper she faced another cruel laugh, another cutting remark, another day of whispers and wounds. But little did anyone know that the wounds they caused would soon turn into the very reason their laughter would end forever. The morning began with the usual rush of workers filling the tall office building. Voices echoed through the hallways. Footsteps hurried across the polished floor, and laughter rose like cruel music whenever the Doorgirl came into view. She stood silently by the entrance as always, her head lowered, her notebook in her hand, her clothes plain, her shoes worn, her figure quiet. She was still the same target of endless whispers, yet on this day something different was about to unfold, something that none of the workers expected. The CEO called for an urgent meeting in the grand conference room. The workers hurried inside, whispering among themselves, wondering what important announcement was about to be made. The air was heavy with curiosity, but their eyes widened in disbelief when the CEO's voice carried across the hallway, and he said, "Bring her in." Everyone turned their heads toward the door, and there she was, the Doorgirl, standing uncertainly, her eyes wide, her hands trembling slightly as she held her notebook. Tighter. She had never been called into such a place before. The workers exchanged shocked glances. Why her? They muttered, "She does not belong here. This is a room for important people." She is just a shadow by the door. But the CEO's expression remained firm, his voice calm yet heavy as he said again, "Bring her inside." The assistants guided her gently, and she stepped across the threshold, her feet moving as if they carried the weight of the entire world. Inside the room, the long table stretched like a river of power, and at the head sat the CEO, his eyes fixed on her, not with anger, not with authority, but with something else, something softer, something hidden. The workers whispered quietly, their voices trembling. Why is he looking at her like that? Why does he speak to her in such a tone? This is not how he talked to anyone else. Usually his words are sharp like knives, but now his voice sounds almost broken. The Doorgirl stood near the table, her eyes lowered, her heart racing. She felt the eyes of dozens of workers burning into her, their stares heavy with confusion and jealousy. She wanted to run away, to disappear back into the shadow of the door. But then she heard his voice again, gentle yet firm. "Are you okay?" The entire room gasped. The word seemed impossible. The most powerful man in the building, the man known for his coldness and strict discipline, had asked the Doorgirl if she was okay. She lifted her eyes slightly, just enough to meet his gaze, and in that moment a silent current passed between them, a current filled with unspoken memories and hidden truths. The workers froze in their seats, their mouths slightly open, unable to understand what they were witnessing. Some whispered maybe she has some secret connection, maybe she is blackmailing him. Others whispered maybe she is a relative, but none of them knew the real reason. None of them knew the storm that lived in his heart. The CEO leaned forward slightly, his eyes never leaving her, and for a brief second the mask of authority slipped from his face, replaced by pain, deep pain that no one had ever seen before. His hands trembled slightly, though he quickly hid them under the table. He cleared his throat and said softly, "You do not have to be afraid. No one will harm you while I am here." The workers gasped again, their confusion growing stronger. What was happening? Why was the CEO protecting the one they all mocked, the one they all treated as nothing? The Doorgirl's lips parted as if to speak, but no words came out. Her throat tightened with emotion. Tears threatened to fill her eyes, but she blinked them back. She could not reveal the truth yet. She was not ready, and she simply nodded. The CEO gave her a small, almost invisible nod in return, and then he turned back to the workers, his face once again cold and commanding. The meeting continued, but no one could focus. All eyes drifted back to her again and again, the mystery burning inside their minds. When the meeting ended, she quietly walked out, her steps light yet heavy with a strange exchange that had just taken place. The workers followed behind, whispering furiously, their curiosity now greater than their cruelty. They wanted to know who she really was, why the CEO cared so much, why his eyes softened only for her. Questions filled the air like smoke, and no answer could be found. The CEO remained in the conference room after everyone left, his shoulders slumped slightly, his face buried in his hands. He whispered to himself words no one could hear, words filled with regret and sorrow. He thought of the past, of the moments that had led to this day, of the promise he had once made but failed to keep, and of the heavy truth that still lived in his chest, a truth that one day would shatter the silence of the entire office. The Doorgirl returned to her place by the door, standing as if nothing had happened, her face calm, her posture steady, but inside her heart beat wildly. She had seen the pain in his eyes, she had felt the connection they shared, and she knew that the day was drawing near when the truth would no longer stay hidden. The whispers around her grew louder, but she no longer feared them as much, because she knew now that he would stand by her when the moment came. And that thought gave her the strength to endure one more day. The air in the office grew heavy the next morning. Everyone walked in with buzzing whispers about the strange meeting from the day before. The workers could not continue their cruelty without mercy. Why did the CEO one morning they left small notes near the door? Why did he speak to her in such a calling soft tone? Her useless? Why did his eyes look so full of pain? She picked up each note quietly, the less they understood, and placed them inside her notebook, like fire in not tearing them. The Doorgirl stood at her just usual place by the entrance, witnesses of her pain. Her posture calm. She told herself that one day these words would no longer hurt. But her hands trembled slightly inside her. They would only remind her of how strong she felt the stares of dozens of eyes. But even as she endured every corner, she felt cracks forming and pressing down on her like stones. Late at night, she sometimes cried until her pillow was wet, she could not asking herself why something inside her whispered at the time of silence was coming without knowing her story. And she braced herself to remember the CEO's eyes, the strange sadness he carried whenever he looked at her. The CEO sat at his desk, but he could not focus on the stand again the next day. It was as if he silently told her not to give up. Word became meaningless. In the office, the gossip grew wilder. Some workers began making bets, the years saying how many more days in silence. He leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. Standing so memories flooded his mind. Others mocked his shoes. Memories he had buried, saying they were relics from another century. But now they clawed their way back. The laughter echoed, demanding to be faced. The workers did not know was that every CEO word was being heard not just by her, but also by the one man who eyes more distant. The CEO, longer when passing the CEO watched his gaze lingering on her. His silence wanted to say something, but anger hidden behind calm eyes. Wilder. He knew the day was approaching when the truth would no longer be buried. Maybe she has forgotten daughter. He knew that the same mouth that strained one day over silent in shame. The gossip became like a storm cloud circling the building. For now he watched, and the Doorgirl felt the weight of every word, though no one dared remain at her place. By afternoon, the CEO called everyone into the conference room, trembling but unbroken. The workers rushed in with nervous excitement. I will endure. Pounding. I will endure. Something was about to understand. Something until the day the truth is spoken. The air crackled with tension. That whisper she faced. The Doorgirl remained outside by another the door. Cutting remark. But before the meeting another began, day of whispers and CEO's voice cut through the silence. But little did anyone know that the wounds and cause would soon turn into the very reason. Again, laughter would end forever. Again, the morning began. Why does he want her here? The usual rush of workers filling the tall office slowly. Voices echoed through the hallway. Her head bowed. Footsteps hurried across the polished floor. She stood at the side of the room, like cruel, trying to make herself invisible. Came into view. But the CEO rose silently by the entrance as always. His eyes burning with unspoken sorrow in her hand. He took a deep breath. Clothes plain. His voice shaking slightly as he spoke. A figure quiet. You all think you know everything. She was still the same target of endless whispers. You mock what you do not understand. Yet on this day, something different was about to unfold. You laugh in pain you cannot see. Something that none of them. And today you will learn the truth. Work is expected. The room went silent. Called for an urgent meeting in the grand conference room. Their breaths held. The workers hurried inside, uneasily in their whispering among themselves. Their earlier laughter wondering what important announcement was about to be made. The CEO continued. The air was heavy with curiosity. She is not what you think, but their eyes widened in disbelief when the CEO's voice carried across the hallway. She is not a stranger to me. Bring her in. Cracked slightly. Everyone turned their heads toward the workers saw something they never imagined. The powerful CEO was standing uncertainly, her eyes wide, the Doorgirl, her hands trembling slightly as she held her notebook. Her fingers clutched the notebook tightly. She had never been called into this moment was coming, but still her workers exchanged shocked glances. Leaned forward. Why their eyes locked on the CEO. She does not belong here. To know the truth. This is a room. The entire building seemed to hold. She is just a shadow by the ticking clock on the wall. But the CEO's expression remained firm. Each second dragging his voice calm yet heavy as he said again. The CEO bring her inside. Heavier. The assistant years ago, I lost someone I loved, and she stepped across someone who meant the world to me. Her feet moving as if they carried the weight of the entire world, and I could not protect them. Inside the room, I blamed myself every day. Like a river of power. I carried that weight into every success, the CEO, into every victory. His eyes fixed on her, but none of it healed. Not with anger inside me, not with authority. When I saw her standing by that door, something else. I knew I could not stay silent forever. Something hidden. She is connected to the workers whispered quietly. She is a reason I carry trembling. And why is the reason I must speak today? Why does he speak to her in rippled across the room? This is not how he talked to anyone else in shock. Usually his words are sharp like knives, quickly died but now his voice sounds almost broken. His eyes filled with emotion. The Doorgirl stood near the table. The Doorgirl raised her eyes lowered. Her tears shining under the bright light. She felt the eyes of dozens of workers burning into her. But now the walls heavy with confusion and jealousy. Her heart wanted to run away, fear and relief, to disappear back into the shadow of the door. Was stepping out of the shadow. But then she heard his voice again. Nothing would ever be the same gentle yet firm. The CEO's voice shook once more. The entire room gasped. You all see her as a Doorgirl. The word seemed impossible. But to me she is the most powerful man in the building. She carries the same blood as a man known for his coldness. She carries the same discipline. And I will never let her be mocked again. The workers froze. She lifted her eyes slightly, their laughter gone, just enough shame to meet creeping into their eyes, and in that moment realized something far greater between them. A current that would change everything, memories and hidden truths. The Doorgirl lowered her head in their seats, but this time lightly open, unable to understand what they were witnessing. The truth was near. Some whispered maybe she had some secret connection, and the mocking voices that had haunted her would soon be silenced. Others whispered maybe she is a relative. The storm had finally begun, none of them knew the real reason. Its thunder echoed in every corner of the room. The conference room was filled with silence so heavy it felt like the air leaned forward slightly. Every worker sat with wide eyes fixed on the CEO. And for a brief second, the earlier gossip now dead on their lips. Replaced by pain. Stood. Deep pain at the side no one had ever seen. Notebook pressed tightly. His hands trembled slightly, though his shoulders trembled on the table. Her heart beating like a drum inside her chest. You do not have to be afraid. The truth was about to come out. No one will harm you while I am back. The workers the CEO's voice shook as he spoke again. Growing stronger. For years I have carried this pain alone. Why was I built this empire with my hands? One day old. I led with strength and fear. The one day inside I was broken. The Doorgirl's lips parted. No one ever speak. But every day words came out. Standing by that door with emotion, and I was reminded of the truth I tried to hide. She blinked them back. Today I will not hide and reveal the truth yet. Today you will hear what I should have said long ago. She simply nodded. The workers leaned forward. Gave her a small, body stiff with anticipation. Sweat glistened on brows. Back to the workers. Hearts pounded. His face once again cold. And no one dared to whisper this time. The meeting continued, but no one raised his hand slowly. All eyes drifted back to her again like thunder. The mystery burning inside. You called her useless. Their minds. Poor. When the meeting ended, she quietly walked out. But she is none of those things. Her steps light yet heavy with a strange crashing into the had just taken place. The workers
workers
followed behind.
Some workers
even
even
covered
their
their
mouths.
mouths. Their curiosity now greater than their cruelty.
The truth
They
had
wanted
cut
to know
through
who she really was.
their cruelty like
While
a
the
blade.
CEO cared
The
so
door
much.
girl lifted
While
her
his
eyes
eyes
softened
softened
only for her.
Tears streaming
Questions
down her
filled the air
cheeks.
like smoke,
Her
and
lips
no
trembled,
answer
but she
could be
did not
found.
look away.
The CEO
remained in
turned
the
to her.
conference room after
His
everyone
own eyes
left.
red with sorrow.
His shoulders
He spoke
slumped
softly
slightly
but clearly,
his face
I
buried
failed
in his
you
hands.
once.
I
He
let
whispered
life
to
push
himself
you into the
words
shadows.
no one could hear.
I let you carry
Words
pain
filled
alone.
with regret and
I
sorrow.
chased power and
He
forgot
thought
my
of the
duty
past,
as a brother.
of the moments
but
that
no
had led
more,
to this day.
never again.
Of the promise
From
he
the
had
day
once
you will
made
never
but
stand
failed to
alone at
keep.
that door,
And of the
From
heavy
today
truth
you
that
will
still
stand
lived
with
in
me.
his chest.
The workers
The truth
sat
that
frozen.
one day would
Their
shatter the
minds
silence of
racing.
the entire
How
office.
could this be?
The
The
door
girl
girl
they
returned
laughed
to
at,
her place
the
by the
girl they
door,
mocked every single
standing
day,
as if nothing had
was the
happened.
sister, the most
Her
powerful
face
man in the
calm,
building.
her posture
Shame
steady,
burned like fire
but inside
her
her
heart beat
they remembered
wildly.
every cruel
She had
word,
seen the pain
every
in his
joke,
eyes,
every
she had
laugh,
felt the connection
and each
they
memory
shared.
now felt like
She
a
knew
heavy
that the
stone
day
in
was
their
drawing
heart.
near when
They
the
had
truth
mocked
would
not
no
just her,
longer
but the
stay
CEO
hidden.
himself.
The whispers around her grew
Was.
louder.
They had mocked
But
the
she
bond
no
of
longer
blood.
feared them as
The
much.
CEO's
because
voice
she knew
grew
now that
louder,
he would stand
sharper.
by her when the moment
I
came.
heard your whispers.
And that thought gave
I saw
her
your
the
cruelty.
strength
I
to
stayed
endure
silent
one more
because I
day.
wanted
The
the
air
truth
in
to
the
come out
office
at the
grew
right
heavy
time.
the next
But
morning.
now you will understand.
Everyone walked in with
If you
buzzing
ever
whispers about
disrespect her
the
again,
strange meeting
if you
from
ever
the
make
day
her feel
before,
small, then you are disrespecting me.
Then I
Words
will
could
never
never
continue
stop
talking.
cruelty without
His words
why did
struck
the
like
CEO
lightning.
one morning they
The
left
girl
small
workers
notes
lowered
near
their
the
Why
head,
did he
mocking
speak to
her,
her
too
in such
afraid to
calling
meet
to
his
his
gaze?
gaze?
Why did his
Too
eyes
ashamed
help
to
to
lift
lift
their
their
eyes?
eyes? She picked up
The
each
more
of
they
those
argued,
quietly,
the less
less
they
they
hunted
folded
them
tighter,
and placed
their
them
curiosity
inside
and
her
hope trembling
like
was
fire in
not
their hearts.
tearing them.
It was from
The
relief
Doorgirl
years
stood
of
at his
anxiety,
keeping them
placed by
silent
years of
witnesses of the
humiliation.
pain.
Her posture
Years
calm.
had told herself that
Now
now
her
her
quiet
duties
being
were,
spoken
but her
no
hands
longer. Her
trembled
brother had
slightly
stood
beside
beside
her
her
remind
scene.
her
Her
how
heart felt
strong
light
she
even
is,
though her
dozens
tears
of
still
eyes
But even as she
piercing her
whispered
very
softly,
corner.
she felt
Thanks
questioning
woman
pressing
her
down on her
voice
like
was
late
so
at night.
audible.
She sometimes
wanted
cried
to
and
heard
heard
it
and
also
gave
knew
her
she
she
could
could
not
asking
run.
herself
And
why
gnawing
that
inside her
her
whispered
at
at
the
the
time
time
people
of
could be so
silence. The
coming
room
down knowing
remained
her story.
quiet.
And she braced
No
herself
laugh
to
remember
remember
the
the
CEO's
CEO's
eyes.
way.
Only
The
strange
silence
office
sat
was
high
buried
city.
whenever he
The
looked
workers
at her.
finally
CEO
saw
sat
that
at his
small
desk
memory
gave
gave
her
not
a
someone
reason
to
to
stand
stand
again the
before
next
him.
day.
Someone real.
Numbers
It was as
blurred
if
and
someone
silent
shadow
told
told
her
deeper than
not
word
to
became
imagine.
meaningless.
In the
Their
office,
shame
always
was
heavy
with
with
pride.
pride.
The
Some
quiet
workers
began
began
making
making
bets
to
to
apologize,
saying how many more days in
CEO's
silence.
cold eyes kept them
He leaned
silent.
back
You
in
might
his chair
feign
one
apologies,
day,
nothing
nothing
compared
memories
to the
flooded his
wounds
mind.
mocked
Others
his
memories he had buried
saying
they
they
were
were
relics
relics
from
from
now they
another
clawed their
gently
way
on
back.
his back.
Echoed
The
demanding
demanding
voice
voice
calmer
calmer
now.
now.
The
What
workers
they
did
did
not
not
know
know
that
that
day
every
the
CEO
CEO
day
would
feared
heard
would
not
change.
just by
His
her
steps
but
I
also
promise
by the
you,
one
his
man
together
eyes
will
will honor
honor
the
the
memory of those
CEO.
years longer when
Together
possible.
the
The
CEO
CEO,
his
his
gaze
gaze
lingering
lingering
high
on her,
silence
no
no
more
more
shame.
something
His
but
anger hidden behind
whispers
calmer
her
eyes.
wilder.
He knew
Her
the
tears
day was
flowed
approaching when the
freely.
truth would
But
no
this
longer
time
be
they were
forgotten
tears of
daughters.
relief.
That the same
Tears
mouths
of
that
heart
strained
one
one
day
day
over
were
shame.
silent in
The
shame.
gossip
Outside
became
the
like a
conference
now
room
he
clouds
waited.
her gossip
But now he
longer
watched,
rose.
and the door
Now
girl
he
felt
felt
the
the weight
storm
spread
every
like
road,
fire,
though
but
no
the door
one
girl
dared say
remained
to
at
her
her
face.
place. Did you hear?
Her
By
backstreet
after the
sister,
CEO
her eyes
called
walked
everyone
into
into
the
the
conference
conference
room.
room.
What have we
but
done?
unbroken.
The workers
Regrets
rushed
whispered
with
silent
silent
excitement.
excitement.
The workers
I will
realized
not
their
pound
laughter
it.
I will
ended
endure
something
until
was
the day
about
the
to
end
happen.
game was over.
Something
Until the
unusual
truth had
had
silence
the air
them all.
crackled
And
with
with that
tension.
door girl
The door
returned to
girl
her
remained
place.
outside
Another
later that
cutting
day.
remark,
Before
but
she
she
no
no
longer
longer
stood in the
whispered
same
the
way.
CEO's voice
Her
cut
little
little
did
did
anyone
anyone
know
know
that
that
the
the eyes
wounds
ring
of
her
higher
ears would soon
God's
silence
no
no
longer
longer
carried
carried
shame,
shame,
but
quiet
peace
forever.
forever.
Everyone
Again,
mourning
possible.
began.
Why
Why
does
does
he
he
want her here?
The
Too
usual
guilty to
rush
go
of
away.
workers filling the
She
toll
no
office
longer
building.
dared to laugh.
Voices
Her heart
echoed same
raced
door that once
her
felt
head
like
bowed,
prison now
footsteps
felt heard
heavy
across
as
the
stones
polished floor.
She
The
stood
CEO
inside
rose
rose
like
like
cruel
trying to
music
make
whenever
herself
the
as he
door
always
came
interview.
But the
But this
CEO
time he
rose
silently
looked
looked
at
at
him
him
towards
towards his
doorway.
eyes burning with
his
voice
voice
gentle
gentle.
in her hand.
From
Today
today
you
you
unlock the door,
his
voice shaking
you are my
slightly
sister.
as he spoke.
And
You will
figure
stand by
you
my
know
side.
everything.
Still the same
She nodded
target
with
trend
random
of
whispers.
You
A
mock when
faint
she
smile
breaks
breaking
something
through
different
her
was
teeth.
about
You
to
laugh, and for the
unpain
first time in
something
years,
that
she felt
none
something.
today you
She
were
felt
about
valued.
expected.
She
The
felt
room
the
went
CEO
silent, and in that moment
urgent
stared
meeting
wide
died.
eyed. Nothing else
The
could
breath
do.
held.
The workers
It had hurried
silent
into
every
every
cool
cool
whispering
voice.
among
They
themselves.
had
Earlier
broken
laughed
every
wondering
false
what
imitation
important
and
announcement
lifted the
was about.
doorbell
CEO
from the
continued.
shadows
The air
into
was
the
heavy
light.
with
She is not what you
workers who
think,
once
but their
laughed. She is
eyes
not
carried
you
shame in their hearts.
She is not a burden.
Voice
Brother
carried
and
across
sister
the
not a
hall
stranger
once
divided by
again.
silence.
Bring her
Voice
in.
cracked slightly.
Everyone turned their
heads
heads
and
towards
would
the
echo
echo
something they never imagined.
forever.
The
The
powerful
powerful
CEO was
standing
struggling to hold
uncertainly,
back tears.
her eyes
The
wide,
door girl,
her
her
hands
hands
trembling
her
slightly
shoulders
as she
trembling,
held her notebook.
her fingers clutched
Tighter.
the notebook
She had
tightly.
never been called
She knew
into
this
such a
moment
place
was
before.
coming, but still her
The
heart
workers
shook.
exchanged
The
shocked
workers
glances.
leaned forward.
Why
Their
her?
eyes locked on
They
the
muttered,
CEO.
"She does not
desperate
belong
to
here.
know the truth.
This is a room
The entire
for important
building
people.
seemed to hold its
She is
breath.
just a shadow by
Even
the
the ticking
door.
clock on the
But the
wall
CEO's
sounded
expression
louder.
remained firm.
Each second
His
dragging
voice
into
calm yet
eternity.
heavy as he said again.
The CEO's
Bring her
voice grew
inside.
heavier.
The assistant
Years ago,
guided her
I lost
gently,
someone I loved,
and she stepped across
someone
the
who meant the
threshold.
world to me.
Her feet
Life
moving as
took
if they
them
carried
away
the
in a
weight of
cool
the
way,
entire world,
and I could not protect them.
Inside the room,
I
the
blamed
long
myself
table
every
stretched
day.
like a river of
I
power.
carried that weight
And
into
at the
every
head sat the
success,
CEO,
into every
his
victory.
eyes fixed on
But
her.
none of it healed
Not
the
with
wound
anger,
inside me,
not with
And when I
authority,
saw her standing
but
by
with
that
something
door,
else.
I knew I could not
Something
stay
softer,
silent forever.
something hidden.
She is connected to
The
the
workers
person I
whispered
lost.
quietly.
She is a
Their
reason I
voices
carry this
trembling.
pain. And
why
she
is
is
he
the
looking at her
reason I
like
must
that?
speak today.
Why does he speak
Gasps
to her in such a
rippled
tone?
across the room.
This is not how he
Workers
talked
told
to anyone
anyone
else.
else in shock.
Usually his
Whispers
words are
filled the
sharp
air,
like
but
knives.
quickly died
But
when
now
the
his
CEO
voice
raised his
sounds
hand.
almost broken.
His eyes filled
The
with
doorgirl
emotion.
stood near the
The doorgirl
table.
raised her
eyes
eyes slowly.
lowered.
Her
Her
tears
heart
shining
racing.
under the bright
She
light.
felt the eyes of
She
dozens
carried
of
her
workers
silence
burning
for so
into
long.
her.
But
Their
now the
stares
walls
heavy with
secret were
confusion
beginning
and
to crumble.
jealousy.
Her
She
heart
wanted to
pounded
run
with
away,
fear and relief
to
mixed
disappear
together.
back into the shadow of the
truth
door.
was stepping out of the
But
shadows.
then she heard his voice
And nothing
again,
would ever be the same
gentle
again.
yet firm.
The
CEO's
CEO's
voice shook once
The
more.
entire room
You all
gasped.
see her as a
The
doorgirl.
word seemed impossible.
But to me, she is
The most
more.
powerful man
She
in the
carries the
building.
same blood as
The
the
man
one I
known
lost.
for his
She
coldness
carries
and
the
strict
same heart.
discipline.
And I
I'd
will
asked
never
the
let her be
doorgirl
mocked
if she
again.
was.
The workers
Okay.
froze. Their
She
faces
lifted her
paled.
eyes slightly,
Their laughter gone,
just enough
shame
to meet his
creeping
gaze.
into their eyes.
And in that
They
moment,
realized
a silent
something
current
far
passed
greater was
between
at
them.
play.
A
Something
current
that
filled
would
with
change
unspoken
everything they
memories
thought they
and
knew.
hidden truths.
The doorgirl
workers
lowered her
froze
head
in
in
their
their
seats,
seats,
but
their
this
mouths
time not
slightly
in
open,
weakness.
unable
This
to
time in
understand
strength.
what they were witnessing.
The truth was
Some
near.
whispered maybe
The
she had some
silence was
secret
ending.
connection, and the
Maybe
mocking
she is
voices that had
blackmailing
haunted
him.
her would soon
Others
be
whispered
silent
maybe
forever.
she is a relative.
The storm had
But
finally
none of them
begun,
knew the real
and its
reason.
thunder echoed in
None of
every
them knew
corner
the
of the
storm
room. The
that
conference
lived in
room was
his.
filled with silence so heavy it
The
felt like the
CEO
air
leaned
itself was
forward
frozen.
slightly.
Every
His
worker
eyes
sat
never
with
leaving
wide
him.
eyes fixed on the
And for a
CEO.
brief second,
the
the mask of
earlier
authority
gossip now
slipped
dead
from
on
his
their
face.
lips,
The
replaced by
doorgirl
pain.
stood.
Deep pain
At the
that
side
no
of the
one had
room
ever
was
seen
a
before.
notebook pressed
His
tightly
hands
to her
trembled
chest.
slightly, though he
Her
quickly
shoulders
hid them under the
trembling.
table.
Her heart
He cleared
beating
his
like a
throat
drum
and said
inside her
softly,
chest.
"You do not
She
have to
knew
be
the
afraid.
truth was about to
No
come out,
one
and
will
there would
harm
be
you
no
while I am
turning
here."
back.
The workers
The
gasped
CEO's
again,
voice shook
their
as he spoke
confusion
again.
growing
For
stronger.
years I have
What
carried
was
this pain
happening?
alone.
Why was
I
the
built this
CEO
empire with my
protecting
hands.
one day all?
I led with strength
Mocked
and fear.
The one day
yet
all
inside
treated
I
as
was
nothing.
broken.
No
No
one ever
girl's
knew.
lips parted
No one
as
ever
it
spoke.
speak.
But
But
every
no
day I
words
looked at
came
her,
out.
her
Standing
throat
by that
tightened with
door,
emotion,
and I was
Tears
reminded of the
threatened to
truth
fill
I
her
tried
eyes,
to
but she
hide.
blinked them back.
Today I will
She
not
could not
hide
reveal
anymore.
the truth yet.
Today you
She
will
was
hear
not
what I
ready.
should have said long
And
ago.
she simply nodded.
The workers
The
leaned
CEO
forward.
gave her a
Their
small,
bodies
almost
stiff with
invisible nod in
anticipation.
return.
Sweat
And
glistened
then he
on
turned
brows.
back to the workers.
Hearts pounded
His
in
face
chest.
once again cold
and
and
no one
commanding.
dared to whisper
The
this
meeting
time.
continued,
The
but
CEO
no one
could
raised his
focus.
hand slowly.
All eyes
His
drifted
voice
back
filled
to
the
her
room
again
like
and again.
thunder.
The
You
mystery
all mock
burning
her.
inside.
You called her
Their
useless,
minds.
poor.
When the meeting
weak.
ended, she
But she is
quietly
none of
walked
those
out.
things.
Her
She is
steps
my
light
sister.
yet heavy with a
The
strange
words crashed
exchange
into the
that had
room
just
like a
taken
storm.
place.
Gasps
The workers
erupted.
followed behind,
Some workers
whispering
even covered their
furiously.
mouths.
Their
Others
curiosity
lowered
now
their
greater
heads
than
in
their
shame.
cruelty.
The truth
They
had
wanted
cut
to know
through
who she really
their
was.
cruelty like
While
a
the
blade.
CEO cared
The
so
doorgirl
much.
lifted
Why
her
his
eyes
eyes softened
last.
only for her.
Tears streaming
Questions
down her
filled the air
cheeks.
like smoke,
Her
and no
lips trembled,
answer
but she
could be
did not
found.
look away.
The
CEO
remained in
turned
the
to her.
conference room after
His
everyone
own eyes
left.
red with sorrow.
His shoulders
He spoke
slumped
softly
slightly.
but clearly,
His face
I
buried in
failed
his
you
hands.
once.
I
He
let
whispered
life
to
push
himself
you into the
words
shadows.
no one could hear.
I let you carry
Words
pain
filled
alone.
with regret and
I
sorrow.
chased power and
He
forgot
thought
my
of the
duty as
past,
a brother.
of the moments
But
that
no
had led
more.
to this day.
Never again.
Of the promise
From
he had
today
once
you will
made
never
but
stand
failed
alone
to
at that
keep.
door.
And of the
From
heavy
today
truth
you
that
will
still
stand
lived
with
in
me.
his chest.
The workers
The truth
sat
that
frozen.
one day would
Their
shatter the
minds
silence
racing.
of the entire office.
How could this be?
The
girl
doorgirl
they laughed
returned
at,
to her place
the
by
girl
the
they
door,
mocked every single
standing
day,
as if nothing had
was the
happened.
sister of the most
Her
powerful
face
man in the
calm.
building.
Her posture
Shame
steady.
burned like fire
But
inside
inside
them.
her heart beat
They remembered
wildly.
every cruel
She had
word,
seen the pain
every
in his
joke,
eyes,
every
she had
laugh.
felt the connection
And each
they
memory
shared.
now felt like
She
a
knew
heavy
that the
stone
day
in
was
their
drawing
heart.
near when
They
the
had
truth
mocked
would
not
no
just her,
longer
but the
stay hidden.
CEO himself.
The whispers around her grew
Was.
louder.
They had mocked
But
the
she
bond
no
of
longer
blood.
feared them as
The
much.
CEO's
Because
voice
she knew
grew
now
louder,
that he would stand by
sharper.
her when the moment
I
came.
heard your whispers.
And that thought gave
I saw
her
your
the
cruelty.
strength
And I
to
stayed
endure
silent
one more
because I
day.
wanted
The
the
air
truth
in
to
the
come out
office
at the
grew
right
heavy
time.
the next
But
morning.
now you will understand.
Everyone walked in with
If you
buzzing
ever
whispers
disrespect
about
her
her
again,
strange meeting.
if you
from
ever
the
make
day
her feel
before,
small,
then you are disrespecting me.